PSI, my seat is safe. I have one patient. It's an MOI. A pedestrian was hit by a car, and I'm going to call ALS for backup. And I'm going to have my partner stabilize C-spine. First, I'm going to check for responsiveness level. Hello, can you hear me? The patient is unconscious, and she has some bleeding to her leg. So she looks to be a 15-year-old female, unconscious with some bleeding. The bleeding I would not say is a life threat. I'd say the main issue is that she's unconscious. So I'm going to move on to ABCs. So first I'm going to check her airway. Her airway is not open, clear, maintained. So I would have my partner do a jaw thrust maneuver to maintain C-spine stabilization, and then I would put in an OPA to open her airway. And now I would move on to breathing. So I listen to two sides. And check for chest rise. And feel for any deformities. There was not adequate chest rise, so we would put her on a BBM at 15 liters per minute. Now moving on to circulation. I don't see any major bleeding besides some of the bleeding on her legs, but that's not an immediate life threat. And then I check her circulation on her wrists. Her pulse on her wrists are strong and equal. And then I check her skin. And her skin is pink, warm, and dry. At this time, I would update ALS, let them know I have a 15-year-old unresponsive female, put in an OPA, and she's on oxygen at 15 liters per minute. And now I move on to my rapid body scan. So I start at her head, checking for any skull fractures, and I find one possible skull fracture, and I'll just take note of that for now, because that could be why she is unresponsive. Then I would check her neck, check for tracheal deviation. I don't feel any, and I would look for JVD, which I also don't see. Then when I move on to feeling the chest, feeling the ribs, palpating the abdomen, checking the pelvis, and then I would check each limb for anything. I find one fracture in one of her ankles, and it's not an immediate life threat. I would also check the voids. And I don't find any major bleeding under her that I can't see. And now I would put her on a backboard. I would check her spine, lumbar, buttocks, and then I would put her back on the backboard. I didn't find anything. And at this time I tried to obtain sample, but my patient is still unresponsive and there's no one on scene, so I can't get sample. And now I would move on to taking vitals. So first I'm going to take pulse rate. Pulse is strong and steady, and it's 72. And now respirations. Respirations are strong, and she's on a back valve mask, so it was 20, but again, she's on a back valve mask. So now I check her pupils. Her pupils are unequal and dilated, so I would take note of that. And I would check her skin again, and her skin is still pink, warm, and dry. And now I do her BP. BP was 104/68. Now I move on to my more detailed body scan. So again, I would start at the head. I would more in depth check her skull, check her scalp, ears, and then I would look in her eyes, nose, and mouth. She has an OPIN, but otherwise I would try to look in her mouth, and I'd also look in the ear openings to check for any fluid, which I don't find. Now I put a C collar on her to stabilize her spine, and I would check her neck again for any deformities. And now I'd listen to the lung sounds again. And this time I do it in 6 places. Breath sounds are clear and bilateral. Now I would palpate the abdomen all 4 places. And at this time I'd also look at the genitalia for any injuries. And then now I'm going to check arms and legs again, and the pelvis. And I would also check PMS at this time, but she's unconscious, so I would just check for all 4 pulses on her wrists and on her feet, and I see that they're all there and strong. At this point, I would re-verbalize my impression to incoming ALS. I would also start treating my patient as needed. So I would have my partner treat the bleeding on her legs. It's not severe bleeding, so we would probably just put some dressings on there. And then we would also put a splint on her ankle just to stabilize it to prevent any movement during transport. But yeah, I would update ALS and tell them that I have a 15-year-old unresponsive female. We put in an OPA, give her high flow oxygen, put a splint on her. She had some bleeding, but that otherwise her vitals are okay, except there is a possibility of a brain injury because she has unequal and dilated pupils, as well as a possible skull fracture. Yeah. Ow. Ow.